Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In, the podcast where we take occupational therapy lens into homeschooling, daily occupations, and the way our children learn and grow. I'm Sarah Collins, pediatric OT, homeschool mom, and your host. And today we're digging into one of the most important tensions in parenting: the need to accept our children exactly as they are, while also expecting them to stretch, grow, try, and become more independent. That balance, acceptance and expectation, is at the heart of every child development and executive functioning. It's also one of the greatest gifts we can give as homeschool parents. So today we're going to explore why kids need opportunities to try, fail, and try again, how the brain learns from mistakes, why over-supporting or under-supporting disrupts executive functioning growth, the gradual release of responsibility model, and OT-friendly examples for your homeschool day. Wow, if that sounds like a lot, it's okay. Before we jump in, be sure to grab the companion guide for this episode because it's linked in the show notes, and it will help you to take this topic and apply it to your family and your environment with specific activities that your children really need and want to do. And I personally need to thank CTC Math for this episode. Their title sponsorship is allowing this podcast to continue through 2026, and you're going to hear more about them later. Now, on with the show. When I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about the movement of neurodivergence acceptance. Now, I recognize how unbelievably important this is for, so many reasons. Back in 2024, inside the OT is In membership that we had at that point, we read Gretchen Rubin's book, My Life in 5 Sentences. Here it is if you're watching on YouTube. Now, it was part of our book club. And when I chose that book, I thought it would help us become more aware of our own sensory systems and give us better insight into our children's sensory processing. And it did. But the quote that stuck with me the most wasn't even about sensory processing. It was about how we see the people that we love. Now, Rubin writes, "To love someone, we must see them clearly, yet we must also be able to imagine them beyond the person that they are today." Unquote. And I remember closing the book right there, because that one sentence captures the deepest challenge of parenting, and I think of homeschooling too. It's balancing acceptance and expectation. So acceptance is seeing our children as they truly are today, and ourselves as we truly are today. We're seeing sensory needs, lagging or highly functioning executive functioning skills, developmental pacing. We're seeing our kids' strengths and their challenges. We're seeing their genuine emotional capacities. Acceptance says, I see you. I see what's real for you right now. But Rubin also reminds us that love means imagining who they are becoming. This is expectation. And that looks like, I believe you can take the next step. I trust you can grow. I'm holding a vision for your future, even if it's only one step forward from today. Expectation is not pressure, it is belief, and it is hope. And at the end of the same book, My Life in 5 Sentences, Gretchen Rubin wrote, "To be Gretchen, I must both accept myself and expect more from myself, to strive to embrace the realities of my nature while also enlarging my sense of possibility. I think I might have screamed yes out loud to this because this is what I've been thinking about for years, and Gretchen wrote it. Guys, there has to be a balance here, and this balance is what allows us to hope. Sometimes we swing in one direction, like too much acceptance, and we're becoming rescuers and we're giving excuses. Don't get the chance to practice persistence and problem solving and frustration tolerance if we have too much acceptance. But too much expectation, and our kids would feel overwhelmed and unsafe, or their nervous systems might just shut down. So true growth needs both. The acceptance helps to regulate, and the expectation develops independence. That balance sets the stage for everything else that there is. Now, today we're going to talk about including the neuroscience, why kids need to struggle, and how OT uses graded challenges to support executive functioning development. This brings us to the research part. Okay, so if you don't necessarily want that, okay, just close your ears for a second or fast forward for 15 seconds, 30 seconds. But I want to make sure that you understand that this is grounded in science. Okay. In occupational therapy, one of our foundational concepts is the Just Right Challenge. And this is coined by Dr. A. Gene Ayers, who is the founder of sensory integration theory. A lot of you have heard those terms before. This Just Right Challenge is the place where a task is not too easy, it's not too hard, but it's effortful and engaging enough to promote new growth. Ayers emphasized that real learning, which is what she called adaptive responses, happens when a child experiences manageable difficulty and gets the chance to adjust, to try again, and experience success through effort. Trial and error strengthens sequencing, it strengthens planning, self-monitoring, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotional regulation. All of these are executive functioning skills, and it strengthens all of them. Kids don't develop these skills through listening. They develop these skills through doing, which naturally includes errors and revisions. So let's check in with the neuroscience, okay? Because this explains why this theory works. Dr. Jason Moser, who is a neuroscientist at Michigan State University, studies something he calls the error-related negativity. I call this the EARN. I had to work, but that's okay. The error positivity component he calls the PE. So bear with me for a second, and this is going to make sense. These two brain responses that occur when we make a mistake. Okay, the EARN, or that error-related negativity, it fires immediately after an error, even before we're consciously aware of it. The PE, or that positivity component, fires when we pay attention to the mistake and try to learn from it. Let me explain these a little bit more. When we make a mistake, the brain sends out two little notifications like text messages, okay? The first one is that EARN, the brain's instant, oops, something was off there. It happens so quickly that we don't consciously notice it. And then comes the PE, more the, okay, let's take a second and learn from this response. This one only happens if we pay attention to the mistake. So the EARN, the automatic oops, and the PE is the let's figure this out. Here's where it gets fascinating. Moser's research shows that children and adults with a growth mindset, which is those who believe that they can learn. Again, you may be familiar with this concept from Carol Dweck's work. So guys, this is not just isolated to one thing. And for those of you in the Executive Functioning for Teens course, we discuss this part in that persistence unit. So grab that if this is something your teens need to work on. Okay, so those with a growth mindset show stronger PE responses, which is that positivity component. Their brains stay engaged after errors, they lean in, they try again, they adjust their strategy. Children with more of a fixed mindset, they show a smaller PE, so they check out after errors. Their brains essentially say, nope, that's enough. So what does this mean for parenting? Kids who believe that mistakes are part of learning literally learn more from mistakes. Their brains show higher engagement, their executive functioning skills grow, they become more resilient, flexible thinkers. So when we normalize these mistakes at home, we model curiosity instead of panic. We're shaping the neurobiology that underlies executive functioning. Guys, get that? We're literally helping to shape our kids' brains. The brain activates more during a mistake than it does during a success. So when kids try and mess up and correct and try again, their neural pathways actually strengthen. Even better, when we make mistakes ourselves and model this response, we shape both our and our children's neurobiology, because after all, we are all lifelong learners. This is corroborated by other researchers like Hans Schroeder and Dr. Janet Metcalf, and they show a few things. One, kids who approach mistakes with curiosity learn more deeply. And error-based learning leads to better long-term retention. The opportunity to revise work boosts executive functioning skills like goal-directed persistence. In other words, failure is not the opposite of learning. Failure is the engine for learning. So a lot of this, guys, it's incredibly, or it should be, hopefully, incredibly reassuring for you as parents who worry that mistakes mean that a child is falling behind. In reality, mistakes show that the brain is active, responsive, and learning, and we can hold all of this with expectancy. Okay, so let's take a minute to hear about CTC Math, our sponsors. And when we come back, I'm going to share some examples of how to put this into action into your home. In our first few episodes of 2026, we're talking a lot about acceptance and expectance. Accepting where children truly are today and expecting that with the right support, they will grow. CTC Math makes that possible. As an occupational therapist, I see how essential it is to honor each child's starting point without rushing them ahead. And CTC Math's mastery-based approach means that your child stays with a concept until it makes sense. No pressure to keep up with an external pace, no fear of hidden gaps. You have access to all levels at one time. So if fractions are hard, you can jump back to where they were introduced in prior grade levels. This allows us to accept today's skill level and expect steady growth through clear teaching, short lessons, and a structure that reduces overwhelm. With built-in progress tracking, you'll always know that your child's strengths and the next step in their learning, acceptance of the present, and confidence for the future. Be sure to check the show notes for a link to try CTC Math free and a coupon code for 50% off for a year, which is exclusive to Homeschool OT. Because honoring where kids are now is the first step to encouraging them to where they are going. Welcome back. So we have talked about acceptance and about expectation, and we've talked about the neuroscience behind how kids learn. And now I want to show you how this can play out in daily homeschool life. I'm going to walk you through 3 examples: writing, chores, and perfectionism that could show up in anything. I want to show you exactly how the gradual release of responsibility, which is a framework I'm going to give you, supports each one. So this framework, which was also sometimes called the framework of guided instruction, it was introduced in education way back in 1983. So for me, that means, and probably most of you, we were inadvertently familiar with it because it's how we were taught. It's one of the frameworks that mirrors both OT scaffolding and healthy executive functioning development. Now, many listeners have heard of this back in episode 8 of the OT is in, and also when I've had my children on with me. And I've talked about vision challenges and handwriting. So in this example, we're going to build from that. If you haven't listened to those, I highly recommend it. But here we go. My son, he struggled with the visual demands of writing from the very beginning. The mechanics of handwriting were exhausting for him. His eyes, his tracking, his spacing, and his endurance. He'd hit frustration fast and long before his ideas ever even reached the page. I wanted writing to be a place of success and not shame. So here's the process that we actually used for years. It was across history, science, literature, narrations, all until about 4th grade. I would say things like, I see your eyes get tired and I see you trying. Writing is hard in this way, right? I would have to be providing him a language. And that helped him regulate his nervous system and reduce shame and open the door for collaboration. Again, this is step one. This is that acceptance that I talk about. I recognize that handwriting wasn't just about putting words on the paper, but involved fine motor work, visual motor integration, visual tracking, sustained attention, sensory regulation. I hope you're hearing all of the pieces within handwriting. But we still expected engagement. We just changed how. So this is step two, or really 1A, because it occurred simultaneously. It's that expectation. I still recognize that his thoughts were and are worthy of being recorded, and I believed in his ability to grow. So I used that just right challenge so he could succeed and build his confidence. And this is where that framework of the gradual release of responsibility came in. So the beginning is like a focused lesson, right? I'm going to do it and you watch. So my son's ideas were strong, but his body couldn't keep up. So in this focus lesson stage, I wrote for him. I wanted him to see that his thoughts were valuable, and he watched me capture his narrated ideas word for word. And this preserved his confidence. It lowered that sensory and the executive functioning demands. Then we would move towards guided instruction. So that's more of a collaboration, or we do it together. So I would cut this narration into strips, one sentence per strip, and together we arranged them in order that made sense to him. Julie Bogart also talks a lot about this, and we've had her on in the past. And also in her book, Brave Writer, she mentions this frequently. So it is not my original idea, but a lot of these founders within our homeschool community are putting forth all of this information. And now you can see why it works well and how you can integrate it into your home. We worked shoulder to shoulder, and I would ask him questions like, which idea should go first? Or does this order make sense to you? He led the thinking and I supported the structure of it. So then the next part would be more collaborative. So you're going to do it. I'm transferring it over to him and I'm just going to help. So with these sentences arranged, my son could copy what he could do each day. Sometimes it was a sentence, sometimes a phrase, sometimes just one word. And I stayed close, encouraging, clarifying, offering some nudges, but the pen was in his hand at that point. And then progressing eventually to you do it alone. This was over several steady years of scaffolding. His stamina and his accuracy grew, and eventually he was writing his narrations independently. This independence did not arrive all at once. Okay, it was slowly, it was piece by piece, and it required that acceptance of where he was and the expectancy that we were going somewhere. You guys, I might tear up at this. Today, he writes very independently, even in a very demanding academic environment. He's now in ninth grade at the Philadelphia Hockey Academy with an A, you guys, an A in English. He will joke with us and say, "We never saw this coming." And I will admit there were days that I feared that it wouldn't, but I also had the hope and the expectancy, and we got there. Sorry. We got there through years of steady, developmentally appropriate scaffolding. Never by pushing faster than his nervous system or his vision system could handle. That long stretch of years with narrating and cutting sentences and rearranging them, copying what he could. As I look back on it from a lens of, wow, we've done it, it's a powerful reminder that progress doesn't look linear or fast. Sometimes that most meaningful growth happens in tiny little steps, steady but tiny, that honor the kiddo right in front of us. It also taught me and reminded me that scaffolding isn't about lowering our expectations, but it giving the supports to meet these expectations. So let's think about another very common scenario. One a little bit less emotional, but still very familiar to me. And it may happen in many of your homes as well. This would be chores. Because just like writing, chores require visual motor planning, sequencing, persistence. Cleaning a room very much does that same thing, right? And when kids struggle with transitions, if they struggle with organization, motor planning, Chores can feel just as overwhelming as writing at a desk. And this acceptance and expectation, I need to give you a reminder, transitions and multi-step tasks are executive functioning heavy. So we need to accept that, but also expect that contributing to the home is still an attainable goal with the right supports. So let's go back to that same guided framework, okay? The focus part, so the focus lesson of I'm going to do it and you watch. So when my kids were little, we had what we called coop time. It was a family rhythm where everyone cared for the home together. Now, our coop, again, a little nerdy, but that's who we are. My youngest observed his older siblings sweeping, sorting shoes, wiping counters. My daughter would do dishes. Then they progressed, and my daughter started cooking for us, and especially for lunch. My youngest did not have to initiate anything at the beginning, just simply watched and joined in where he could. And as he was little, it was natural modeling, and that was the focus lesson. Then came more guided instruction of we're going to do this together. So my kids aged, schedules no longer aligned, and that built-in modeling disappeared for my youngest. So I introduced what we called notice and respond. So you notice something that needs to be done and you do it. You respond to it. And we would practice this together. I notice the stairs are dirty. Let's sweep them. I notice the counters are crumbly. Let's wipe them. I notice there are shoes everywhere. Let's pick them up, right? These weren't just chores, but opportunities to practice this noticing, prioritizing, sequencing, again, all executive functioning skills. Then came the more of a collaboration after we did this together for a while. You're going to do it, you notice, and I'll help. But when I stepped back, he repeated the same chore over and over, the same location, the same task. It was within his comfort zone. And at first, I was super frustrated by this. Can't you just see, right? And just get it done. But through an OT lens, something super important. He wasn't avoiding that work, but he was initiating the task that he actually had skills to do. Notice and respond isn't just one step, it's like a whole chain, right? It requires situational awareness, task initiation, decision making, sequencing, persistence. It's a lot for a developing brain. So I had to back up and stay close, ask some gentle prompting questions, and model my own noticing out loud. So I supported without taking over. He led, and then I scaffolded. Eventually, we got to you do it alone. We handed over responsibility kind of one piece at a time. My son learned to genuinely notice and respond independently across different areas in the home. Independence emerged not from pushing him harder, but from aligning expectations with development and practicing consistently. I do need to say this is still a work in progress. He currently helps with our chickens every day, mainly because he's motivated by the eggs that he gets to sell. And because I write it on his daily list. At age 10, he would not and likely could not remember and independently start this on his own every day. We still have a ways to go on that, but I accept that and I'm going to continue to expect that it is going to grow. All right. Whew. It's a lot, guys, but I want to make sure that you can apply this into your own homes, that you can see that this goes across different occupations, right? Or activities, ways that we occupy our time. In this next example, perfectionism, this one doesn't come from my own homeschool, but it does come from questions that I receive frequently from parents. In perfectionism moments, kids are actually requiring emotional regulation, which is the tolerance of their discomfort, flexibility to try a different strategy, working memory, which is holding these steps in their mind, task initiation to get started even when unsure, persistence to stay with it, metacognition to reflect what's happening. See, so many things are happening just to get one task done. These are all executive functioning skills, but guys, not obedience skills. So when we respond with acceptance and expectation, then we're scaffolding these systems instead of reinforcing avoidance. So if you ever have seen this perfectionism, I'm hoping that you recognize it's not about ability, but can be very much about fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of not knowing, fear of disappointing someone, or even fear of how uncomfortable it feels in their body when a task isn't immediately clear. This can go all the way back to that growth mindset and the neuroscience that we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. So let's walk through how this can fit into this gradual release model. That focus lesson of I do and you watch, right? So when a child is in this perfectionistic shutdown, the first step is not to hand the work back to them and just say, try again, because they're not ready and their nervous system is not available at that moment. So in this stage, I would model what it looks like to begin imperfectly. You might say something like, all right, I'm going to look at this problem out loud. I'm not totally sure how to start it either, but I'm going to take a deep breath and try one small piece. I would narrate my own thinking and break this problem apart, whether it's math or science or whatever it is, try to break it apart. So this is the important part, probably the most important, is I would likely make a mistake myself and then adjust. Again, we want to move into this part where we're going to say that oops and the growth piece, that PE of, okay, so how can I change and adjust? This is where that growth happens. Because if the adult can be wrong safely, it signals to the child that there is no danger here. This is all in that focus lesson. It's lowering the threat and it's teaching through modeling. Then with that, we do it together. Once their body would soften a bit and re-enter this window of tolerance, I'm going to move through this first step together. It might sound, let's look at this part. What's one thing that we do know? Or I'll write the first number, you tell me what comes next. They're not carrying the cognitive or that emotional load alone anymore. We are sharing it. The stage is about co-regulation and shared problem solving. Their confidence comes from your presence, not from knowing the right answer. Now, next, that collaborative part where it's you're going to do it and I'm going to help, we're going to shift the pencil towards the child, not by saying, okay, now you do it. That's too big of a leap. Instead, it would be something like, you try this next step. I'm right here and I can help if you get stuck. Then stay close enough to support, but far enough back that they are doing that thinking. Maybe asking, what's your idea about what comes next? Or how could we check that? They're leading, and I'm simply keeping steady. This is the phase where the biggest emotional gains happen because they're experiencing that success from their own effort, not from the rescue or the avoidance. Now, finally, the independent stage, it doesn't mean finishing a whole worksheet. It might mean doing one problem alone or working for 2 minutes, choosing a strategy without prompting. They're teeny tiny little steps, but they matter. This is independence appropriate to their developmental stage, the same way that independence grew gradually from my other children in the writing and the chore examples. Over time and with continued modeling, shared work, and supported effort, a child can learn that discomfort is temporary, mistakes are survivable, and trying is safe. And again, that's where the real executive functioning growth happens. Across writing, chores, and this perfectionism, the process is the same. The focused lesson, the guided instruction, the collaborative, and the independent. It's supporting this growth and acceptance and expectation. The result, mistakes are safe, effort is expected, and discomfort is temporary. Whew. We have covered a lot today. Neuroscience, executive functioning, stories from my own kids, this gradual release of responsibility framework. It's a lot of information, and I want to pause and acknowledge that. Welcome to season 2. Just like we are accepting our kids where they are, we also need to accept where we are as parents and as educators. You might be hearing some of this from the first time and feeling really stretched, or you might feel encouraged. I hope you feel encouraged. I hope maybe you feel like, wow, this is eye-opening, but you may also feel like this is a little overwhelming, and that's okay. That's the acceptance piece. But I also want to hold this expectation piece because the same way that we do for our kids, the truth is you can do this. As parents and educators, we absolutely can help our children to build independence, confidence, and executive functioning through these small, consistent shifts, not perfection, right? So let's put this into a simple little thing that you can start using today. Remember, download the companion guide in the show notes to help you. So one would be name a task. Choose one area, not 5. Choose writing or math or chores or art, morning routines, anything, not all, one thing. Name the task clearly so that your brain knows what you're supporting. Ask yourself some questions like, what does acceptance look like here within this? And what about the task is truly hard for my child? Is it sensory, visual, emotional? Is it executive functioning, sequencing, frustration tolerance? Guys, we've said a lot of different things that it could be that is causing the struggle. So try to see if you can figure it out. That could mean observation for a while. But also, with the acceptance piece, what does expectation look like here? What is a reasonable next step that respects that development and nudges their growth? These two questions alone can transform your day. If you have a hard time with figuring that out, that's what my coaching services are for, and I am here for you. Okay? The next step would be to identify which stage of that gradual release model your child is actually in. So most frustration happens because we misjudge this stage. Are they still in this focus lesson and they need you to model it? Or would that be really annoying for them and they just need more guided instruction and need some high support? Or are they ready for collaborative, but they still want proximity? Are they ready for a tiny piece of independence for 1 minute and then two and then three? Because we have to think through and recognize that children are going to progress through these stages at their own pace. Now, four, we have to allow some struggle within this window of tolerance. This is where that neuroscience and OT lens comes from together. Remember that earn of the oops signal and then the PE of the brain's okay, let's learn from this. They need this cycle, not the overwhelm, panic, shutdown, but they do need some productive struggle. That means regulation of a regulated nervous system and a manageable challenge. Five, celebrate. Celebrate the process, but not the product. Not the perfect handwriting, not the perfect math score, but the effort if you stayed with it. You tried something new. You could ask a question like, what worked here? That's called reflexive questioning, and it's beautiful. Or you can point out you showed flexibility or you showed persistence. These are all executive functioning victories and the ones that are stick. So here's to accepting where we are today and expecting beautiful growth ahead. Thank you for being here. And please join me in this expectancy of growth for Homeschool OT as well. Like this episode, share it, please. We're here for another year, so let's make it count. And remember, the OT is always in.